Welcome back. Welcome back. This is the Intelligent Developers, led by Bueno and Jerrod Delaine. And today we have a talented young man named Justin Smith. Justin, how you doing, man?
I am doing great on this Friday, although it feels like a month of Mondays, but I'll take it because it's a Friday.
Wonderful, wonderful. Andre, how you doing, man?
I'm doing really well. I'm so excited to jump into this conversation. Just having had the pleasure of getting to know Justin over the last half decade or so. Um, he has so many stories, so many non-linear journeys that he's like engaged, so many side quests. And I think it's so important. Like if we just kind of just jump into it, like, from the beginning, like Justin, like what really attracted you to real estate? Like why development?
You know, what's interesting about that is that's probably the most linear thinking that I was, is kind of like, this young pup that was kind of thinking about this whole real estate thing. But you know what? It actually came out of a problem because I didn't get in and thinking, you know, I was going to do real estate. I didn't. I got in it because I was a little bit upset. So just think of it like this. I mean, everybody's, been in elementary school, middle school, or what have you, right? So I'm from Oakland, California, particularly West Oakland. At that point in time, a couple of things happened in our neighborhood that I thought was very interesting. Number one, there was this creation of an area called Preservation Park. If you're in downtown Oakland, you'll see this collection of Victorian homes, and it's really nicely done. And so that was really cool. So Preservation Park was this place where you can kind of go and you can do community meetings. You can do, people had their businesses there, right? So just over the freeway was this area that was a big giant field. And then behind my house was another area that was just a big giant field. It was kind of sandwiched between two parks. And so me and my brothers would, say, hey, all right, let's go to the park. So we throw our bike over the fence, hop the fence, jump on the bike, roll through the yard. And there were several of these spots and places that we would do that, and somewhere going to the park, you'd pop a wheelie or jump over some abandoned something or whatever, and you're just kind of rolling through the dirt on your way to the park. It was the cool thing to do. Then all of a sudden, in a blink of an eye, the fences went up, the green fences, the dinosaur-like equipment came, and then all of a sudden, houses were built. And then I'm like, I was all kind of a little bent out of shape because of that. So I pick up the newspaper and I see that everybody wants to rebuild Victorians. And so they were taking these lots and land inside of West Oakland and other areas and emulating the Preservation Park by actually building new housing that looked that mimicked sort of the Victorian character of the houses that permeates across West Oakland. And so at that point in time, I was like, a little peeved by that, but at the same time, I was hooked on this concept that you can take nothing and build something and build it in the eyes and the image of something else. And so, the story was told, and I was hooked, and took drafting classes in high school, and I was a doodler anyway. But I was amazed at the fact that you could build these things out of nowhere. Um, you know, and what's also interesting is I actually met um, and know now one of the developers that did that to what we called our spot and our lot, and commended him on what he did because it really inspired me to go down this linear journey of, how do you design, build, develop, and later own and construct a city block. And that's been my journey. And that's what's been linear, is to create, build, and own a city block. Now, I've done that
That's
several times over, but the genesis of it was, hey, you're screwing up my pathway on my dirt bike to the park.
that's so fascinating because like I grew up in Altadena and across the street from where I used to live eventually was redeveloped into a modular senior living facility. And
Yep.
to watch the old senior living facility get torn down, and to see the single family homes around that block really get assembled, acquired, scraped, and then eventually redeveloped as a phase one, phase two project, and to watch the modules drop, that was so incredible. So, hearing and then, obviously, like, similar to you, like really being able to, you know, watch that over the course of decades and eventually connect with the developers and eventually learn who the manufacturers were,
Yep.
or the fabricators. It's absolutely incredible. So I really appreciate that that has been how your story has come together.
Yeah, no,
But
it's been great. And so, oh, go ahead.
no, I was gonna say, like, and it sounds like you've really like embodied that learning by doing philosophy. Is that right?
Yeah, no, that's true. I mean, you got to get your hands dirty. Um, um, and then you got to clean them and then walk in and ask somebody for $1 million. So, and that's, so that transition from all this kind of understanding of the linear and the place and space I wanted to be in, really led me to the Cal Polys of the world, where I did my undergraduate and other academic institutions where I've also studied. But really, it's been kind of following through this learn by doing philosophy, where in our community, in the African American community, you might hear the term, someone says, "Hey, he's good with his hands," right? And so as a youth, you kind of hear those things and you learn those things, but as you really matriculate through this in real estate journey, or at least my journey, it's been less of doing with your hands, but doing with your mind and doing and doing with everything else, and so I've had to in some
That's why
cases
we're
just
called the
say no.
intelligent developers, not the hardworking,
Not
hands-on,
the
with your fingers
hey,
under your fingernails developers.
hey
Yes, yes,
man,
yes.
but don't get it wrong. If I get a call from one of my units and someone says, "Hey, the water heater is busted and it's Sunday and it's like 6:30 and my guys just let off," yeah, I might have to go in the garage and put some dungarees on and do my thing. But technically, the
I've
learn by
called Jerrod
doing.
so many times where like I'm unclogging a toilet and he's just like, "Why? Like that sounds
Why?
terrible."
What are you doing?
Hey, you know, and then once you unclog it, you got to clean your hands and go back to your pro forma or fix that presentation that you're going to do tomorrow for a CDFI. So, I think the learn by doing, is definitely, don't learn by doing it by hand, but learn by doing it strategically, right? And so that's where I've adapted. And then, with the onslaught of new technology and AI and new
Mhm,
ways of doing things, you do need to learn how to navigate, all of these
mhm,
different places and spaces. And I think and I thrive on that because I like to learn, I like to listen, sometimes I like to, do things by hand, but sometimes you just have to do things, say, all right, you know what, I'm going to do it with my mind. I'm going to challenge myself to do it with my mind. How would I do that? Right? Who do I call? Who do I talk to? It's been a many a day or many a night. I call Jerrod and I'm like, Jerrod, you know what? I got this problem. I know you got this. You might have the problem. You probably have the answer. And we can, throw that idea around. And I think that's the power of those who are listening to this. Is have your community around you of sounding boards, right? Of people that are doing the things that either you want to do, you could do, you don't know how to do, but you have a community, and I call it a constellation. Build your constellation around you of like minded people. And in some cases, you need some unlike minded people because you need that sounding board too. You might say, hey, this site needs a senior center. And then that non-aligned person would say, senior center, what are you crazy? It's across the street from a university. Like, why would you do that? Right. And so, build your constellation.
So you did your undergrad in Cal Poly, and you did your MBA at Ohio State University. Can you tell us a little bit about your educational journey? What are some lessons you walked away from the Ohio State?
Well, tons of lessons at the Ohio State University, you know, top of the football pyramid. But you know what's
Oh
interesting is
Lord.
no, but what's interesting about that is, you know, I didn't go to Ohio State for either one of those things, you know, and
Mhm.
shamelessly, I didn't realize they were that well ranked, you know, because I was, you know, busy doing other things, right? And just wasn't really immersed in that side of society. But I was interested in, I mean, at that point, I had finished my, you know, architectural studies, my construction management degrees, had years of work experience, and I was looking to unlock the next stage in my sort of real estate career, and that was understanding finance and connecting that with access to capital. It was my
Mm,
understanding that the MBA would do just that, and what I found is that it supports that thinking. It does, but it
mm,
doesn't necessarily do just that, meaning the access to capital piece, right?
mm,
It can, depending on your institution, depending on your networks, depending on your, you know, your, again, your constellation that's around you at that particular university. Um, but it's not automatic. And so you
mm,
really have to work and be intentional about, you know, accessing the capital and understanding and unlocking that phase of finance. And then there's a third piece of actually working and doing that in some of those pieces. And so the MBA was really, you know, kind of, you know, putting those two pieces together. The other
Was it
thing
worth it
is,
though? Like is that something that you think like really provided you that larger like return on investment?
um, you know, I'm probably on par when it comes to return on investment with respect to the degree versus, you know, what I've been able to do kind of, you know, on side that, right? I don't, unless you're in like the top, you know, 2, 3 schools in the US, you know, yes, I think you can really truly leverage the name in the school. Um, but I was looking for the top 5 schools in real estate finance.
Okay.
So
And
so
like did that allow you to like kind of like buckeye your way into working at Greystar? Or like what was the like was that a direct path or how did that play out?
no, it wasn't even a direct path, not at all. One of the things that how Great Star sort of came in the picture is at some point I began to understand and build and develop student housing and educational infrastructure and structures, right? And so I was part of a company, and I was the Western regional end of a company. Actually, that company was EDR, and that's all we did was build and develop student housing. Nothing
And
but
for those who like don't know, like Greystar is one of the largest multifamily developers and operators in the world. So like can you kind of give our listeners a little bit of, you know, perspective on how large this scale is and how much territory you had to cover?
so my responsibility was the Western United States from Colorado to Hawaii. So
Wow.
that was sort of my territory, and so for about 8 years, I uh, developed and built with our 2-man team about 1,500 units of student housing. So we did a 14-story tower in Hawaii. You know, we did that was about 599 units, and then Colorado we did about 2 projects, one roughly 80 units, the other about 119 units. Boise State, 599 units over there. 284, 1,100 beds at another CSU school right here in California. And so for like every 2 months,
It's
it
like
was
half a
just,
billion or is it more of that? Like
oh, I mean, it was more. It's probably $750 million or so of
wow.
real estate that, you know, I was able to in some cases acquire, develop, and build, or, you know, answer an RFP and develop and build. but in all cases in under roughly 20 months. Like we developed a system of how you um, how you do student housing. I mean, like, if and the one thing about student housing is if you're not first, if you're not on time, you're last. And if you're last, you're probably buying out the entire city for a whole year, maybe for however much time. So you really had to understand the systematic approach to getting things done from the beginning of concept all the way to, welcoming, 300-400 students, to move into a dorm and so on. So that was an area that I really thrived on, and I really enjoyed, and I transferred a lot of that into my multifamily developments from a systematic approach to how do you get from A to Z in a time frame that makes sense.
So tell us about Relequity Enterprises, sir.
Yeah, no, that good point. And thank you for that. Relequity Enterprises, or Relequity as I call it, was really my vision on how to press beyond, my comfort zone and build a new zone, right? How do you take all of these things that you know over your life? Like, I built and developed, federal buildings. I've done student housing buildings, many times over. And I'm also working on now transit-oriented development projects. And really, Real Equity was just like this place in space that said, okay, number one, you can do this on your own. Number two, you build the right team. You know you can do this, and stop thinking you're going to do it on your own. Number one, and so really, it's this place in space that does advisory services. For those that are organizations that want to, that have a piece of land or want to redevelop a project or whatever, we can work with them to help, get them their vision. At the same time, we look to build our own vision, right? We look to develop, our own projects. We were looking at some projects that we won just recently right here in the Northern California Bay Area, which is transit-oriented development, right? And so that's it's conceptual, it's mission-driven, it's complex, it's multifamily, market rate, workforce housing, affordable housing, and kind of the whole gamut. And it's rebuilding a community that was damaged by governmental and transit structures and systems. So it's a lot of those different things. But Relequity is the perfect, I think, the perfect organization to take on these bigger challenges and have different partnerships with different groups and different organizations to really do two things: put heads on beds and roof over heads.
And have you been able to share, I guess, kind of like these insights with the Urban Land Institute through your role as sitting on the board of directors?
Oh, definitely. I mean, once again, when you talk about, who's in your constellation, it's always great to be in a network of people that are doing different things. I can reach out to, individuals, right here in the Bay Areas that are doing things around transit, that are doing things around waterfront, that are doing things around climate and sea level rise, and be able to, converse about, okay, well, how is that affecting what we're doing here? And then there are global trends. When you think about, what's happening in California, when you think about, what's happening in fire damaged areas and how that works. Well, when you have this network, or when you're part of an organization like a ULI, or you're part of an organization like AREP, which is a national federation of chapters, you have people, again, that you can, talk to and really leverage, and they can leverage you too. This is not a one-way street. This is a, a two-way sort of street where you can share in knowledge and that type of thing. So I really appreciate being part of, AREP. I'm the president of the AREP chapter right here in the Bay Area. Also, like you mentioned, on the board of ULI. And so, it's about leveraging those networks. It's about talking with those people. It's about building partnerships, not transactions.
And
But
what role do you think organizations like AREP can play in helping shaping the future of the industry?
That's interesting because I think one of the things is AREP plays a role in sort of developing some of these underutilized or undirected spaces and places. Like, when you think of a community, it's not one demographic group, right? There are multiple groups. There's multiple needs. Everyone, wants a house, wants a place. Everyone wants a neighborhood. And I think that AREP helps connect some of those folks in these disadvantaged neighborhoods and say, hey, well, oh, you got an idea on this 2-acre parcel that you had over here that no one's been doing anything with because, there may not have been the knowledge base, or there might not have been the capital where somebody can connect to that particular piece. Or hey, there's a faith-based organization, and in some of our cities, churches have had declining members, right? And so they may need to reposition, the 2-3 parking lots that they have to something that actually serves that particular community that's there. I'm also working in a space of community colleges, right? And there's a big shift in community colleges, and I have a development deal with a community college and so on. So, working in that space as well. But AREP is just one of those places where you have the untapped talent or the unknown talent to the majority world, but we can build partnerships, and I've built partnerships through that. We've gone after deals through that. We've accessed capital through that, and all of these different things.
And I imagine so many of these opportunities are, not only largely dependent on, those who are looking for those opportunities, but also like regional chapters and um how how willing they are to kind of engage in those conversations. Um, with regards to like just the changes in technology, like you have this like next generation of developers, they have so many things that they really need to kind of think about, whether it's construction costs, capital markets, entitlement risks. If you were to kind of give advice to like this younger developer who's coming up in 2026 today, what would that be? What would you be thinking about?
You know, I think the advice I would probably give is begin, and this is probably one that you've probably heard a million times, but it's begin with the end in mind, right? I'm sure you've heard that, like, okay, no, and you may not know how you're going to get there, but know where you want to go, right? Have a picture in your mind of what that is. It could be, 6 units, it could be 400 units, it could be a 35 unit, it could be a 48 unit building right on Crenshaw, or it could be, a 50 unit building on
There
Telegraph.
we go,
And
Crenshaw.
nope,
That's exactly what
right.
we're talking about.
So, but with that particular picture or focus on what that end is, I would say be systematic in your approach to the deal and every deal. Be systematic, like create every little milestone as much as possible. Create every little stepstone. And if you're in development and you're leading the development, have an off ramp at each one of those milestones, because you might need to call an audible and say, okay, tap out, I'm done, right? And so understand at those milestones what that is. But if
Like,
it's
how do you get
nothing else.
comfortable with that? Like you come in with this like idea of like I want to change this community or this specific neighborhood, and then you get into the project, but then you realize that you need these off ramps. Like, what's the rationale or the thought process? Like, is it are you coming to terms with failure, or are you understanding something differently? How do you think about that?
No, I don't think it's coming to terms with failure. I do think that as you evolve, the world evolves too. As you approach a deal, the world and the communities around you evolves and changes too. So you can't be 100% blind, kind of blinders on, focused on this one thing, when you may along the way something happens, a demographic shift. The world all of a sudden gets a cold. A mayor comes into place, a federal shift happens, right? And so you have to kind of factor in the unknown in that. And it's not a bad thing that you're making a shift, because you might not be able to access the capital to do this mission driven thing that you're trying to do. And it may be better suited that a nonprofit, for example, steps in and do that. And then you sell it to that nonprofit, or you partner to that nonprofit. Is it a failure that you and your development firm didn't achieve that end goal? No, it's not. Is it a success that some other group, like a nonprofit or a smaller developer or even a bigger developer, took that dream over and took it to the next step? Evolution happens, change happens. Be ready to adapt to that, and don't walk through it with just the blinders thinking, well, doggone it, I'm going to do these 48 units if it kills me. Well, you know what? Watch what you ask for.
Justin, thank you so much, man. We truly, truly appreciate you coming through and talking to us today.
Yeah.
Thank you so
Man, I
much,
mean, hey,
Justin.
thanks for having
Like
me.
your point about the marathon continuing, like it's really a baton race, right? Like, and
That's right.
when we're thinking about like we're thinking about community development, like so many of these points that you shared with us really, really resonate. I truly appreciate you taking the time to speak with us as well.
Hey, man, thanks for having me on this Friday. And let's hope that tomorrow's Saturday and not another Monday.
All right, my man. We'll talk soon. Bye.
All right. Thank you. You guys have a good one.
Until next time.